Bruce Lee's most dangerous fight. Only 11 people witnessed it. Oakland, California, December 1964. A cold winter afternoon that would change martial arts history forever. Behind the locked doors of a small kung fu school on Broadway Street, two men faced each other. One of them was Bruce Lee. The other was Wong Jackman, a traditional kung fu master from San Francisco's Chinatown. What happened in that room during the next 8 minutes was supposed to stay secret forever. But secrets have a way of coming out. And this one reveals everything about who Bruce Lee really was. This is the story Bruce Lee never wanted you to hear. It started 3 days earlier. Bruce Lee was teaching at his Jun Fan Kung Fu Institute in Oakland. He was only 24 years old, but he was already making waves. He was doing something unthinkable, something forbidden. He was teaching kung fu to non-Chinese students. In 1964, this was considered a betrayal. For centuries, Chinese martial arts masters had kept their secrets within the Chinese community. They believed their fighting systems were sacred, not to be shared with outsiders. But Bruce Lee did not care about tradition. He believed that truth had no nationality. He believed that anyone who wanted to learn should be allowed to learn. This made him enemies, powerful enemies. The traditional kung fu community in San Francisco's Chinatown was watching him. They saw his mixed classes, his American students, his revolutionary teaching methods. And they were angry, very angry. On December 1st, a messenger arrived at Bruce Lee's school. He was young, maybe 19 years old, dressed in traditional Chinese clothing. He walked into the school during an afternoon class. Bruce was in the middle of demonstrating a technique to his students when the young man approached. The messenger did not bow. He did not show respect. He simply handed Bruce an envelope and walked out without saying a word. Bruce's students gathered around as he opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in Chinese characters. One of Bruce's Chinese students translated it aloud. The letter was from the Chinese martial arts community of San Francisco. It was formal, traditional, and absolutely clear in its message. Bruce Lee was violating the ancient codes. He was dishonoring Chinese martial arts by teaching them to foreigners. He must stop immediately. If he did not stop, he would be challenged. Bruce read the letter again, slowly. Then he did something that surprised everyone in the room. He laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not an uncertain laugh. A genuine, amused laugh. He folded the letter carefully, put it in his pocket, and went back to teaching his class as if nothing had happened. But his students noticed something. For the rest of that class, Bruce Lee's techniques were sharper, faster, more intense. Something had changed. 2 days later, on December 3rd, Wong Jackman arrived in Oakland. Wong Jackman was not like the young messenger. He was a serious martial artist trained in the classical styles of Northern Shaolin. He was in his late 20s, tall for a Chinese man with a lean, muscular build. He had a reputation in San Francisco's Chinatown as a formidable fighter. He was known for his speed, his precision, and his adherence to traditional forms. But more importantly, he was known as a man of honor. When the elders of the martial arts community asked him to deliver their message to Bruce Lee, he agreed. Not because he hated Bruce Lee, not because he was jealous, but because he believed in preserving tradition. Wong Jackman arrived at Bruce Lee's school at exactly 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He was accompanied by 5 other martial artists from San Francisco, all dressed in traditional training clothes. They entered the school without knocking. Bruce was teaching a private lesson to one of his students. He stopped immediately when he saw the 6 men enter. For a moment, nobody spoke. The atmosphere in that small school became heavy, electric. Bruce's student instinctively stepped back, sensing something was about to happen. Wong Jackman stepped forward. He spoke in Cantonese, clear and formal. He said he had come on behalf of the traditional martial arts community. He said Bruce Lee had been given a warning and had ignored it. He said there was now only one way to resolve this matter: a challenge match. If Bruce Lee won, he could continue teaching whoever he wanted. But if Wong Jackman won, Bruce Lee must close his school and stop teaching non-Chinese students. The rules were simple. No rules. Traditional challenge match. Fight until one man could not continue. Bruce Lee's student would later recall that Bruce did not hesitate for even a second. He looked at Wong Jackman, then at the 5 men standing behind him. He looked at his watch, then he spoke. Also in Cantonese. He said, "Okay, but not today. Give me 2 days to clear my schedule. Come back on Saturday, December 5th, 2 o'clock in the afternoon." Wong Jackman nodded. Saturday, 2 o'clock. Then he and his companions left as silently as they had arrived. After they were gone, Bruce's student asked him if he was worried. Bruce Lee turned to him and said something the student would never forget. "Worried? No. But I'm going to learn something important on Saturday. Either about him or about myself." Bruce Lee did not tell many people about the challenge. He did not announce it. He did not brag about it. He simply prepared. On Thursday and Friday he trained differently. His wife, Linda Lee, noticed it immediately. He was not practicing flashy techniques or complex forms. He was drilling basics over and over: punches, footwork, timing. He was preparing for a real fight. Linda asked him if he was concerned about the challenge. Bruce told her he was not concerned about winning or losing. He was concerned about what the fight would teach him. He knew that Wong Jackman was a skilled traditional fighter. He knew this would not be like the demonstrations and sparring sessions he usually did. This would be a real test. On Friday night, Bruce barely slept. Not because he was nervous, but because his mind was racing with scenarios, strategies, possibilities. Saturday morning arrived cold and gray. Bruce woke up early, did light stretching, ate a small meal. He told Linda to stay home. He did not want her to see the fight. This was going to be serious. At 1:30 in the afternoon, Bruce arrived at his school. He unlocked the door and went inside alone. He cleared the training area, moved equipment to the sides, created an open space in the center of the room. Then he waited. At exactly 2 o'clock, Wong Jackman arrived. But he was not alone. He brought the same 5 martial artists who had accompanied him on Thursday. Behind them came 2 more men, older, clearly masters from the traditional community. Bruce Lee had not invited anyone. He had wanted this to be private, but when he saw the group entering his school, he understood. This was not just a challenge match. This was a statement. The traditional community wanted witnesses. They wanted proof. Bruce did not protest. He simply gestured for them to come inside. The 7 visitors entered and positioned themselves along the walls of the training area. They stood silent, watching, waiting. Then, at the last moment, something unexpected happened. 3 of Bruce Lee's students appeared at the door. They had somehow heard about the challenge. They asked if they could watch. Bruce looked at them for a long moment. Then he nodded. If Wong Jackman could have witnesses, so could he. The students entered quietly and stood on the opposite wall from the traditional masters. Now, there were 10 witnesses in that small school. 10 people who would later tell very different versions of what happened next. Wong Jackman stepped into the center of the cleared space. He removed his jacket, revealing a simple black training uniform. He began his warm-up, traditional stretches and forms, moving with precise, controlled movements. Bruce Lee did not warm up. He simply stood at the opposite end of the space, watching, analyzing. One of Bruce's students would later say that Bruce looked different that day. Not angry, not excited, calm, dangerously calm. When Wong Jackman finished his warm-up, He stood in a traditional kung fu stance and nodded at Bruce. Bruce Lee nodded back. One of the older masters from San Francisco spoke. He said in Cantonese that this was a traditional challenge match. No eye strikes, no groin strikes, no attacks to the throat. Fight until one man submits or cannot continue. Both fighters nodded their agreement. There was no referee, no bell, no countdown. The older master simply said one word, "Begin." For the first few seconds, neither man moved. They circled each other slowly, maintaining distance, measuring, calculating. Wong Jack Man held a classic northern Shaolin stance, weight distributed evenly, hands positioned for both attack and defense. His movements were textbook perfect, exactly as the traditional forms taught. Bruce Lee's stance was different, lower, more mobile, weight shifting constantly. It was not any recognizable traditional stance. It was something he was developing, something new. The witnesses held their breath. Then Wong Jack Man struck first. He launched forward with a traditional straight punch, fast and precise, aimed at Bruce's chest. It was a testing attack designed to gauge Bruce's reaction and speed. Bruce slipped the punch easily, moving his upper body just enough to let it pass by his shoulder. He did not counterattack. He simply reset his position and continued circling. Wong Jack Man attacked again, this time with a combination. A high punch followed immediately by a low kick. Classic traditional combination designed to split the opponent's attention. Bruce blocked the punch with his left hand and checked the kick with his shin. Still no counter. Still just defense, observation, learning. The traditional masters along the wall nodded slightly. Wong Jack Man's technique was excellent, exactly as it should be. But Bruce's students noticed something else. Bruce was not just defending, he was studying. His eyes never left Wong Jack Man's center, watching the subtle shifts in weight, the tells before each technique. Wong Jack Man increased his pace. He launched a series of attacks, punches and kicks, advancing, trying to pressure Bruce, trying to force him into a mistake. Bruce gave ground, backing up, absorbing the pressure, his defense tight and efficient. This continued for perhaps 30 seconds. To the witnesses, it might have seemed like Wong Jack Man was dominating, forcing Bruce to retreat. But then, something changed. Bruce Lee stopped backing up. It happened in an instant. Wong Jack Man threw another punch, the same straight punch he had been using successfully. But this time, Bruce did not slip it. He did not block it. He intercepted it. Bruce's hand shot forward and trapped Wong Jack Man's punching arm at the wrist. Before Wong Jack Man could react, Bruce had closed the distance between them and was inside his guard. What happened next happened so fast that the witnesses would argue about it for years. Bruce struck Wong Jack Man with a rapid series of straight punches to the body and head. Not wild swings. Not telegraphed attacks. Short, direct, explosive punches fired from close range. Wong Jack Man tried to create distance, tried to reset to his preferred fighting range, but Bruce followed him, maintaining the close distance, cutting off angles, not allowing him to escape. The traditional masters along the wall shifted uncomfortably. This was not how traditional challenge matches were supposed to go. There was supposed to be an exchange of techniques, a display of forms and classical combinations. This was something else entirely. This was a street fight. Wong Jack Man, to his credit, did not panic. He changed his strategy. He used his footwork to create angles, moving laterally instead of straight back. He threw quick kicks to try to keep Bruce at bay. But Bruce adapted instantly. Every time Wong Jack Man tried to establish his preferred distance, Bruce closed it again. Every time Wong Jack Man tried to use traditional techniques, Bruce interrupted them before they could fully develop. One of the traditional masters would later say that watching Bruce Lee fight was like watching water. He had no fixed form. He simply flowed into whatever space Wong Jack Man left open. The fight had been going on for about 2 minutes now. Both men were breathing harder, but Wong Jackman was breathing much harder. He was discovering something that would change his understanding of martial arts forever. All his years of training, all his perfect forms, all his traditional techniques meant nothing if he could not create the time and space to use them. And Bruce Lee was not giving him time or space. Around the 3-minute mark, the fight changed again. Wong Jackman made a decision. He could not win this fight standing and trading with Bruce. He needed to change the game entirely. He suddenly dropped low and shot in for a takedown, trying to grab Bruce's legs and bring the fight to the ground. It was a desperate move, not part of traditional Northern Shaolin training. But Wong Jackman was fighting for survival now, not for style points. Bruce sprawled, defending the takedown by spreading his legs and dropping his weight. He wrapped his arms around Wong Jackman's upper body and started striking the back of his head and neck with short, hammering blows. Wong Jackman released the takedown attempt and tried to create separation. But as he backed away, Bruce pursued him aggressively. This was when the fight became truly chaotic. Wong Jackman began moving around the room, trying to use the space to reset, to catch his breath, to find an opening, and Bruce chased him. Not in a wild, mindless way, but with purpose, cutting off angles, hurting him, not allowing him to recover. The witnesses had to press themselves against the walls as the two fighters moved around the room. Furniture was bumped. Equipment was knocked over. What had started as a formal challenge match had become a desperate chase. One of Bruce's students would later describe this phase of the fight as terrifying. He said it looked like Bruce had become something else, something relentless and unstoppable. Wong Jackman threw everything he had. Spinning kicks, jumping techniques, desperate combinations. Some of his strikes landed, but they did not slow Bruce down. Bruce's counterstrikes were different. They were precise, economical, targeted. He was not trying to knock Wong Jackman out with one big punch. He was breaking him down systematically, strike by strike, pressure by pressure. Around the 5-minute mark, Wong Jackman's movements began to slow. His techniques became less crisp, his footwork less precise. He was exhausted, but the fight was not over yet. Wong Jackman's back hit the wall. For a moment he had nowhere to go. Bruce was directly in front of him, cutting off his escape routes. This was the moment when the fight could have ended. Bruce loaded up for what looked like a finishing combination. But then, something unexpected happened. One of the traditional masters from San Francisco shouted in Cantonese. He said, "Enough! This has been proven." Bruce stopped his attack mid-motion. He stepped back, breathing hard, looking at the master who had spoken. Wong Jackman, still against the wall, also looked at the master. His face showed a mixture of relief and shame. The master stepped forward into the fighting area. He looked at both men and spoke again. He said the challenge had been answered. He said there was no need to continue to injury or humiliation. He said the traditional community had seen what they needed to see. For a moment, it seemed like the fight was over. But then Bruce Lee did something that shocked everyone in the room. He said, "No." Bruce looked at Wong Jackman and spoke directly to him, ignoring the master who had tried to stop the fight. He said in Cantonese, "We agreed to fight until one man could not continue. Can you continue?" Wong Jackman, still leaning against the wall, exhausted and hurt, straightened up. He looked at Bruce for a long moment. Then he nodded. He could continue. The traditional master tried to protest, but Bruce cut him off. He said this was between him and Wong Jackman. Nobody else. Wong Jackman pushed himself off the wall and moved back into the center of the room. He raised his hands into a fighting position, though his arms were visibly shaking from exhaustion. Bruce respected this. He did not attack immediately. He waited for Wong Jackman to set himself. to prepare. This was not cruelty. This was Bruce giving Wong Jackman the chance to face this with dignity. The witnesses were silent. The atmosphere in the room had changed. This was no longer about style versus style or tradition versus innovation. This was about will, about who wanted it more. Wong Jackman attacked first in this final exchange. A desperate, lunging punch with everything he had left. Bruce slipped it, trapped the arm, and swept Wong Jackman's legs out from under him. Wong Jackman fell hard onto the wooden floor. Bruce followed him down, establishing a controlling position, ready to finish the fight with ground strikes. But he did not strike. He looked at Wong Jackman and asked him in Cantonese, "Are you finished?" Wong Jackman, pinned on the floor, unable to escape, did not answer immediately. The witnesses would later disagree about what happened next. Some said Wong Jackman verbally submitted. Others said he simply stopped resisting and turned his face away. But everyone agreed on one thing. The fight was over. Bruce Lee had won. Bruce stood up slowly. He was breathing hard, covered in sweat, but he was not injured. Wong Jackman remained on the floor for a moment longer, then slowly got to his feet with help from one of his companions. The room was absolutely silent. One of the traditional masters approached Bruce. He bowed formally and deeply. He said in Cantonese, "You have proven your point. We will not challenge you again." But Bruce did not bow back. Instead, he said something that would be debated and discussed for decades. He said, "I did not prove my point. I proved that I have a lot to learn." Everyone in the room looked at him in confusion. He had just won decisively. How could he say he had things to learn? Bruce looked at his hands, flexing them, feeling them. Then he spoke again, more to himself than to the witnesses. He said, "That fight took too long. It should have been over in seconds. My techniques were inefficient. My conditioning was not good enough. If Wong Jackman had been armed, if there had been multiple opponents, I would have been in trouble." Wong Jackman, still catching his breath, looked at Bruce with an expression of disbelief. He had just been beaten, and his opponent was criticizing his own performance. But Bruce was serious. The fight had shown him weaknesses in his own approach. He had relied too much on chasing, on pursuing. He had wasted energy. His finishing techniques had not been decisive enough. In Bruce Lee's mind, this fight was not a victory. It was a lesson. The traditional masters did not know how to respond to this. They left quietly, taking Wong Jackman and the other witnesses with them. Bruce's students remained for a moment. One of them asked Bruce if he was happy about winning. Bruce did not answer directly. He walked to a chair and sat down heavily, his body finally showing the exhaustion he had been suppressing. He said, "Starting Monday, everything changes. We are going to train differently. We are going to think differently. Today showed me that traditional techniques are too complicated for real fighting. We need something simpler, more direct, more efficient." His students did not fully understand what he meant at the time, but they would. In the coming years, Bruce would develop and refine what he called Jeet Kune, the way of the intercepting fist, a martial art with no fixed forms, no classical techniques, only principles of directness, simplicity, and efficiency. The fight with Wong Jackman was the catalyst for that revolution. After everyone left, Bruce locked the door of his school and stood alone in the training area. The room was a mess. Equipment was scattered. Furniture was displaced. There were scuff marks on the walls where Wong Jackman had been backed up during the chase. Bruce did not clean up immediately. He stood there, replaying the fight in his mind, analyzing every moment, every technique, every mistake. He realized something profound that day. He realized that in a real fight, there is no time for beauty. There is no time for classical form. There is only what works and what does not work. and many of the techniques he had been teaching, techniques from traditional Wing Chun, had not worked as efficiently as they should have. This realization was both liberating and disturbing. Liberating because it freed him to explore new approaches. Disturbing because it meant discarding years of traditional training. When Linda Lee came to the school that evening, she found Bruce sitting in the dark, still in his training clothes, deep in thought. She asked him how the fight had gone. Bruce told her he had won, but he said it without pride, without satisfaction. She asked him what was wrong. Bruce said, "I won today, but someday I might face someone faster, stronger, better trained. And with my current level I might lose. That is not acceptable." From that day forward, Bruce became obsessed with improving, not just physically but philosophically. He began studying biomechanics, kinesiology, Western boxing, fencing, wrestling, anything that could make him more efficient. The fight with Wong Jack Man had humbled him in a way that victory usually does not humble people. In the weeks and months after the fight, something strange began to happen. Different versions of the story started circulating. Wong Jack Man's version was that the fight had been essentially a draw. He claimed that he had not been defeated, but that the fight had been stopped by the masters before a conclusion could be reached. He emphasized that Bruce had violated the agreed-upon rules by using grappling and ground fighting. Some of the traditional masters who had witnessed the fight supported this version. They said the fight had been inconclusive, that both fighters had shown skill, that it proved nothing except that different styles have different strengths. Bruce Lee's students told a very different story. They said Bruce had dominated from start to finish, that Wong Jack Man had been completely outclassed, that the fight had ended with Wong Jack Man on the ground begging for mercy. Bruce himself rarely talked about the fight. When asked, he would usually say it was a private matter and change the subject. But to his close students and friends, he would occasionally mention it as the fight that changed his life. Not because he won, but because it exposed his limitations. The truth, as witnessed by 10 people who were actually there, probably lies somewhere in the middle of all these versions. Yes, Bruce won. That is not really in dispute. Wong Jack Man ended up on the ground, unable to continue. But it was not the complete domination that some of Bruce's students claimed. Wong Jack Man was a skilled fighter who landed his share of strikes and made Bruce work hard for the victory. And the fight did last longer than Bruce wanted, by his own admission, around 7 to 8 minutes. For someone of Bruce's skill level fighting an opponent one-on-one, he felt it should have been over much faster. The question is, why did different witnesses remember it so differently? Some say it was ego. People remember events in ways that support their existing beliefs and loyalties. Others say it was the speed and chaos of the fight. In the heat of the moment, with adrenaline and emotion running high, accurate observation is difficult. But there is another possibility, one that few people consider. Maybe the different stories exist because Bruce Lee asked for them to exist. Here is what very few people know. 3 days after the fight, Bruce Lee met privately with Wong Jack Man. This meeting was witnessed by only one person, a mutual acquaintance who had been asked to arrange it. According to this witness, Bruce approached Wong Jack Man not as an enemy, but as a fellow martial artist. He told Wong Jack Man that he respected his skill and his courage in accepting the challenge. Then Bruce made an unusual request. He asked Wong Jack Man not to talk about the details of the fight. He asked him to tell people it had been close, inconclusive, a matter of different interpretations. Wong Jack Man, confused, asked why. Bruce explained his reasoning. He said if the martial arts community believed he had completely destroyed Wong Jack Man, it would create problems. It would make him a target. Every traditional master would want to test him to prove that their style was superior. But more importantly, Bruce said he did not want to humiliate Wong Jack Man publicly. He said Wong Jack Man had fought with honor, had accepted defeat with dignity. There was no need to destroy his reputation. Bruce suggested that if the story remained ambiguous with different versions circulating, it would actually benefit both of them. The traditional community could save face by claiming it was inconclusive. Bruce could avoid becoming a constant target for challenges. And the real lesson of the fight, the need for martial arts to evolve, could be pursued quietly without public controversy. Wong Jack-man agreed. This agreement was never written down. It was never formalized. It was simply an understanding between two martial artists who had tested each other and learned from the experience. This is why, to this day, there are so many different versions of what happened in that Oakland school on December 5, 1964. Not because people are lying, but because Bruce Lee deliberately created ambiguity to protect both himself and his opponent. The fight with Wong Jack-man was never filmed. There are no photographs. There is no objective proof of what exactly happened. All we have are the memories of 10 witnesses filtered through time, emotion, and loyalty. But the impact of that fight is undeniable. After December 1964, Bruce Lee's approach to martial arts changed completely. He abandoned the idea of style altogether. He stopped teaching Wing Chun as a system and started teaching principles instead. Speed, directness, efficiency, simplicity. These became his obsessions. He trained harder, studied deeper, questioned everything. The physical conditioning that would later make him famous, the incredible speed and power, the philosophical depth, all of it can be traced back to the lessons of that 8-minute fight. Wong Jack-man, for his part, also changed. He continued teaching traditional kung fu, but he incorporated some of the lessons from his encounter with Bruce. He became less rigid, more open to adaptation. The two men never fought again. They were never friends, but they maintained a respectful distance from each other. When Bruce Lee died in 1973, Wong Jack-man was one of the few traditional masters who attended the funeral. He bowed to Bruce's casket and said a prayer in Cantonese. Someone asked him what he was praying for. He said, "I'm thanking him for the lesson he taught me about my own limitations." So, what is the truth about the secret duel Bruce Lee never wanted you to know about? The truth is, it was not the fight itself that was secret. The fight happened, witnesses saw it, stories were told. The real secret was what Bruce learned from it. He learned that traditional martial arts, as practiced in 1964, were not efficient for real fighting. He learned that forms and techniques needed to serve function, not the other way around. He learned that evolution is more important than preservation. But he also learned something else, something deeper. He learned that defeating an opponent is easy compared to transcending your own limitations. Wong Jack-man was never Bruce Lee's real enemy. Bruce Lee's real enemy was his own satisfaction with his current level. The fight forced him to confront the gap between where he was and where he needed to be. And that realization, that hunger for constant improvement, is what made Bruce Lee into a legend. The fight lasted 8 minutes. But the lessons lasted a lifetime. Bruce Lee never wanted you to know about this fight. Not because he was ashamed of it, but because he wanted the focus to be on the principles he developed afterward, not on the event that inspired them. He wanted you to focus on Jeet Kune Do, on the philosophy of continuous self-improvement, on the idea that the best fighter is not the one who knows the most techniques, but the one who can adapt to any situation.